Does Iran care about the people of Gaza, about Palestinians? Absolutely not. The Iranian regime doesn't care about Iranians. Would they care about the people of Gaza? Come on, give me a break. They killed 45,000 people this year. Of course they don't care. They see death as a prize. Gaza was used just like the entire Palestinian cause was used by every different player in the region for many, many years and being used today by the left in the West as a vehicle. I call it like a horse that you can ride and everybody is riding it into their different battles.
Today's guest is Danny Burmawi. Danny is a former Muslim from Jordan, a writer, commentator, and author of Islam, Israel, and the West. When Danny first joined me, he made a fascinating argument. He said Iran never built a ring of fire around Israel. It built a ring of fire around Saudi Arabia and the Arab world. Since then, the Middle East has changed dramatically. Israel has struck deep inside Iran. Iran's proxy network has suffered major setbacks. President Trump has pursued diplomacy, and the biggest question facing the region is no longer whether Iran can be challenged, but whether Iran can be trusted. Danny, welcome back.
Thank you, Daniel.
Danny, Iran has signed agreements before. Iran has made promises before, negotiated before. What evidence from the last 45 years suggests the regime has fundamentally changed? Why should Americans believe that this deal is different from other deals Iran has used to buy time, relieve pressure, and advance its long-term goals?
President Trump doesn't seem to have any other models in his pursuit of peace other than money. He seems to believe that if you give incentives to any country to be richer, wealthier, then they will join us. They will join us in this pursuit of happiness. This is a Western thing. So you don't just globalize it and you don't assume that all people want what you want. No, there are different groups of people who want to bring about the end of the world. So Iran, because it's an eschatological regime, so they're on a mission, and on a divine mission, and they don't look at this world as worthy of anything. That is why they're ready to be martyrs. Martyrdom in their ideology is the highest purpose, is the ultimate goal. It is that is why mothers, after they lose their sons in wars, you look at them, they're happy, they're smiling, they're singing and dancing, and you don't understand that because you live inside the Western bubble. I understand it. Yeah, you have no idea what's going on there. You think this is some kind of lunacy or, exception, some people on the fringe. But the truth is that this is just a religion or an ideology that has a religion, but it programs people to react this way. So when we talk about this deal, I look at the assumptions behind it, that Iran is going to promise us they're not going to pursue a nuclear weapon. Of course, President Trump is, every word he says is planned or calculated to move the market. So, you can't take what he says at face value, because you need to look beyond. But here's a statement that, Iran has the right to defend itself or to have ballistic missiles, just like the neighbors of Iran, meaning, he didn't say it, but meaning Saudi Arabia. So we need this balance. But again, the assumption is that the Iranian regime is just another regime that is running as a nation state. So that's another false assumption, because we're not talking about just a government, a legitimate government in Iran. We're talking about a regime that hijacked the country, hijacked the lives of millions and millions of Iranians, turned their lives into living hell, imposed its religious mandates on the people who apparently have this disenchantment with Islam, but you want to legitimize them. 2 weeks ago, 2 months ago, you were saying they're not legitimate. They're monsters. They're criminals. So what's happening now? Again, President Trump wants to move the market in a certain way. He wants to bring the prices of gas down. That's why he wants to open the Strait of Hormuz. We are stepping into an election season. He really doesn't want the Democrats to control the Congress, because there will be a witch hunt for the next 2 years if that happens. So I understand. I am pro-Trump. I support President Trump. But I had to really criticize this deal and to write about it, to write about a truce in Islam, the definition of a truce, the concept of a truce. You sign a Hudna in order to rearm, to regroup, to put things together. If you're weak, you sign a truce. And once you can fight again, then, and beside that, or on top of that, for the Ayatollah regime, survival is a triumph because their ideology is built on the grievances of Al-Hussein. And Al-Hussein was massacred in Karbala. So their entire model is built on victimhood, but survival too. So you are massacred, you are oppressed, you are, injustice is being handed to you, but at the same time you survive. So that is the narrative that Ayatollah regime sells to its people.
Now, how does the Arab world view Trump right now? Do they view him as being weak or that he has no other choice? What is their view on him?
Just as the Arab world has always believed the Western leaders to be. So Hassan Nasrallah spent 3 decades trying to convince the Lebanese people and beyond in the Arab world that, listen, the Americans, they're going to betray you. The Americans, they don't have values. They don't have principles. They don't care about you at all, about their allies. Look at our alliance with Iran. That's what Hassan Nasrallah would say. We are equal partners. Iran respects us. Look at you. You have an alliance with America? You're slaves to them. You're servants. They are your masters. They're going to sell you. They're going to abandon you. Hassan Nasrallah passed away before he sees his prophecy fulfilled. The United States abandoned the Kurds, abandoned the Druze, the Alawites, abandoned the Iranians, abandoned Israel. So that is how the Arab world is looking at the United States today. They don't care about us. They don't care about the minorities. They don't care about peace. They don't care about anything except making better deals. Unfortunately, that is the norm when it comes to statecraft, when it comes to securing the interest of your country. If I am leading a country, I will definitely have the interest of my country at the top of my list. After my country, everything else follow. But there are moral obligations when it comes to minorities in the Middle East, in Islamic countries. For example, the Druze. The Druze, historically, they would ally themselves with whoever is ruling the country they live in. Look at the Druze in Israel. Look at the Druze in Lebanon. In Lebanon, they would always go with the powerful. It's like whoever is ruling, Syria, let's go with Syria. Hezbollah, America has influence. But in Syria, after President Trump gave legitimacy to ISIS, the Druze decided not to ally themselves with the new government. Why? People need to understand this because in the theology of the HTS, Al-Qaeda, ISIS, Sunni theology, actually, Druze are not considered to be similar to the people of the book, like Jews and Christians. Jews and Christians are to be offered the chance to live in Islamic countries and pay jizya, live under the Islamic supremacy. Druze, however, according to Islamic theology, are not to be given that chance. They must be killed. Even if they repent, even if they convert to Islam, they must be killed. So their situation is much worse, way worse than Jews and Christians. That's why, because the leaders of the Druze community in Syria, they understand Islamic theology. They said, we cannot work with this government. We cannot just pretend there's nothing wrong that's going to happen to us. And immediately, we saw thousands of Druze people getting killed, beheaded, literally beheaded on camera, and Druze women kidnapped. So what do you want? What do you want the minorities to say when they see the United States, the most powerful nation on earth, abandon them, install an ISIS leader, a former ISIS leader, as a president of a country? And of course, I understand that President Trump supporters, they would say, no, President Trump took office after al-Sharia was installed in Syria. But come on, give me a break. President Trump just yesterday, he said it was Erdogan and me who installed this guy in Syria, and he's doing magnificent job. So that is the reality.
Now, what does victory actually look like in this conflict with Iran? Did the U.S. know what they're signing themselves up to, that they wouldn't be able to accomplish their goal? Was it a trap? Can they be defeated? What do you think about that?
So the Strait of Hormuz has always been used by Iran to put pressure on the international community, put pressure on the West, to bully the West. And Iran did the same thing now. President Trump was not expecting them to survive. That's why he really was tough on them in the first few months of the war. But yeah, the Shia, historically, their resilience is really high. They're among the most resilient groups in history. I mean, if you read about what Sunnis did to Shia throughout the Islamic history, you will just be shocked. They were enslaved, massacred in every generation. So they have resilience. That's why Israel was not able to finish Hezbollah in Lebanon, and that's why Iran was resilient. But of course, they also have the cards. They have the Strait of Hormuz. They were threatening the international trade routes. They were threatening or attacking the Gulf states. Yes, the United Arab Emirates was able to fight back to defend itself, but I mean, come on, how long do you think the United Arab Emirates would last? Because the United Arab Emirates built its entire economy on the fact that it is a secure nation. It is where business migrate to. It is where wealthy people go to live. So the United Arab Emirates, just one example, cannot afford this war to keep going. So there were like multiple pressure points. And of course, we have the election, we have the pressure on President Trump from his own administration. So that is why a triumph was not possible, because you don't want to send, you don't want boots on the ground, because I believe that would be catastrophic to the United States. No boots on the ground, for sure. But anything short of changing this regime is not a triumph. But the problem is, how do you change it? Are we talking about Balkanization? Are we talking about, the Iranian people, they did not help, actually, because they should have done something on parallel with the war. But they completely, I don't want to say completely, but it's like we didn't see anything. So there was no internal pressure, the regime. So you need to cripple the regime. If you cannot change it, you need to cripple it. Is this deal going to cripple it? I doubt it. We're talking about billions of dollars. Yes, the administration is trying to frame it in a way that, no, they're not going to get anything. But I mean, other statements say otherwise. So President Trump said, we froze their assets. Now we don't have the right to freeze their assets. So, well, there are assets that are going to be unfrozen now. So that is a lot of money. The Iranians yesterday, they said, okay, we're sending Hezbollah more money soon, once our assets are unfrozen. So this is not a crippling the regime. This is reviving the regime. So I don't see how, I honestly cannot see any positive thing about this deal, except that President Trump wants to end the war and sell his constituent that there is peace in the Middle East, just like he sold them the lie that there was historical peace between Hamas and Israel. You remember the agreement in Cairo and how he sold it as, this is the first time there is peace in the Middle East since 3,000 years. It's like, we who understand the region, we were laughing because we knew that was a ceasefire. That's it. It's a ceasefire. It's not a huge peace deal. But anyway, so I think President Trump was cornered. There was no way for him to keep the war going. But my question is, did he really have to sign a bad deal like this? Couldn't it be like just a little bit less bad? Why is it this bad? That is the question.
Yeah. They say that Iran can lose militarily, but it never loses diplomatically. For some reason, they've always known how to negotiate, and they've always had a leverage in negotiating. Is that a correct assessment?
Yeah, this is what President Trump himself said like 13 years ago in a post on X. And there was a journalist who reminded him of this. And President Trump asked him, who said that? Who said that? President Trump himself forgot that he said it. So again, it's about the resilience. It's about the fact that the Iranian regime can survive for a long time. It's like a camel, a camel in the desert can survive for a very long time without food and without water. The same thing with the Iranian regime. They don't care, they don't function on any external conditions. Like, for example, their economy since the first year after Khomeini took over in the Islamic Revolution. I remember the president of Egypt, Mohammed Anwar al-Sadat, back then, he delivered the speech. He was talking about the economy of Iran. He said Iran used to export oil for $86 million daily. And that is 1980. Just imagine. Then he said, look at the numbers today. The Khomeini is destroying Iran. So yes, they don't care about growth, prosperity. They don't care about any of that. So there is, if someone has nothing to lose, you can't threaten them. They're very scary. The Iranian regime is very scary because they don't have anything to lose. What are you going to do? Are you going to kill us? Who cares, man? We have a committee of 85 people ready to replace the Ayatollah the moment you shoot them. So we don't really care about death. We don't care about infrastructure. You want to destroy our infrastructure? Fine. We will live in tents. We'll live in caves. So they have nothing to lose. That's why if you are dealing with a different country that has interest other than ideological, if they have like economical interest, you can, blackmail them. You can threaten them. But what are you going to do with this regime? And unfortunately, the Western diplomats and the Western politician doesn't seem to understand this. They keep assuming that there's something, there got to be something the Iranian regime wants. It couldn't be that they only want the end of the world. That is not possible. But, well, let me tell you, that is what they want. They want the return of Al-Mahdi. In Arabic, they say, عَجَّلَ اللَّهُ فَرَجُهُ. May Allah hasten his return. So that is the problem with Messianic figures that come with absolute destruction that is contingent on the people. So, for example, in Judaism, the Jewish people are expecting the Moshiach to come to bring peace and justice and to defeat the enemies of Israel. It's going to be the Messiah himself who's going to lead the war. In Christianity, the same thing. There's going to be tribulation, there's going to be suffering, but the Messiah is going to protect his people. He's not asking them to wage wars in preparation for his coming. Yeah, that is the Islamic Messiah. That is the Islamic Messiah. And this is really, it's like absurd. It's like he wants them to occupy Saudi Arabia, take over Al-Kaaba in Mecca as a contingent for his return. That is as a condition for his return, I'm sorry. He will come only when the Shia control Mecca. So they will keep trying to control Mecca until to make sure that he returns. So we're dealing with a horrible set of ideas here.
Yeah. The last time you said that Iran didn't build a ring of fire around Israel. You said that it built a ring of fire around Saudi Arabia. Looking at it now, how is the relationship between Iran and Saudi Arabia? And would you update that statement that you made?
No, of course not. Of course not. It's like the bigger framework is that Iran doesn't have an ultimate mission against Israel itself. Israel is a problem on the way for the Iranian regime. Israel is the reason that Sunni puppets are installed to rule Sunni countries. Israel is the reason why the corrupt, unjust Sunni leaders are controlling Muslims. So you get rid of Israel in order to liberate the Sunnis from their ideology, from their theology, and from their leaders to join the Shia of the Imam. So that doesn't change. But the smaller frame inside that bigger frame is that today Israel is what needs to be dealt with. So that's why Iran's entire rhetoric and entire foreign policy is built around Israel. But when it comes to Saudi Arabia, I have no doubt that the Saudis, they understand the theology that I'm telling you about, because they're not naive as many in the West. Hamad bin Salman himself, I mean, if people think, oh, Danny Burmawi is, exaggerating the role of theology in this war, yeah, whatever. Just listen to MBS, Hamad bin Salman. A few years ago, it was an interview in Arabic, and he was actually explaining the theology of the Ayatollah regime to the guy who was hosting him. And he said at the end, how do you deal with a regime believes that? So this is not something I'm making up. This is something that Saudis understand because, we are talking about two schools of thought, the Sunnis and the Shia. Now, at the same time, Saudi Arabia doesn't want a secular Iran because a failed theocratic Iran is much better for Saudi Arabia than a secular thriving Iran. A secular thriving Iran, my friend, will be the most important ally of the United States in the region. It will be on the same level of Israel. It will be a real partner, not just another country that the United States, deal with for strategic interest. No. It would be a real partner because once you get rid of the ideology that causes the stagnation, you can thrive. You can build real economy. You can build real relationships. So that is scary to Saudi Arabia because it deems Saudi Arabia irrelevant. So the same thing is true about Lebanon too, by the way. A Christian Lebanon is on the same level of Israel when it comes to its relationship with the West. I mean, because the Lebanese project was destroyed on the hand of people who imported the Islamic causes inside Lebanon and destroyed it, and because the Iranian project also was destroyed on the hand of the Ayatollahs, the West was left with no other option to ally with except Islamic countries. And on top of them is the United Arab Emirates, which kept the Islamic shell, but the substance itself is becoming more Western every day. So that is why the United Arab Emirates is becoming more and more important every day. And that is why Saudi Arabia now is flipping against the United Arab Emirates, because the United Arab Emirates genuinely succeeded in building partnerships with the West that is actually reciprocal, that is not built on taking advantage of each other. Saudi Arabia is not capable of doing that because the transformation or the modernization that was being promoted inside the kingdom was not motivated ideologically, but economically. So they did not care. They were not motivated by a change of heart regarding what they believe, their worldview, but because they're concerned of a post-oil era, about the diversification of income. So that is why it failed.
Now, what role does Qatar play in all of this? Because it seems like they're siding with many different sides at the same time, and this has been going on for a while. What is their end game?
I never looked at Qatar as a country. Qatar is like a company, and it is reasonable for a company to make deals that seem contradictories. But inside each deal, there's interest for the company. So there's no principle, there's no value, there's only interest. And the interest of Qatar is to advance the causes of the Muslim Brotherhood. That is the interest. Actually, Qatar is the perfect example for what I said at the beginning of this interview. Qatar is extremely wealthy country, right? Did wealth change them? Did wealth bring them into the circle of nations that pursue happiness and stability and peace? No. So why do you assume that enriching the Iranian regime is going to bring them back into this circle? So Qatar is conflicted when it comes to Iran because there was some kind of unification between the Muslim Brotherhood and the Ayatollah regime. It is an alliance that is similar to the alliance between the left and Islam. This alliance is symbiotic, or even though both sides, they disagree on everything, the Muslim Brotherhood and Iran, they disagree on everything, but they share the same enemy. And the same enemy in the region is countries that is genuinely walking toward secularization, modernization, pro-West. So that is why they are now coming together. And that explains why Al-Khomeini, for example, he translated the books of Sayyid Qutb Sayyid Qutb is the pioneer of the Muslim Brotherhood. He's the person who talked about al-Hakimiyya and al-Jahiliyya, the abode of war, the abode of Islam. So they borrowed the vocabularies from Sayyid Qutb and they stuffed their ideology with their Shia understanding. So, but I mean, the alliance makes sense from a theological perspective, from a strategic perspective. So Qatar, it's like, if you ask me what Qatar is going to do tomorrow, I have no idea, because Qatar could do anything. If you ask me, for example, do you think Israel would support ISIS in a certain country? I would tell you absolutely not, because could it use it strategically? Yes, of course. Could the United States use Al-Qaeda in Afghanistan strategically? Yes, that is like, it makes sense. They're using them. But on the ideological level, Israel would never ally with ISIS. The United States would never ally with Al-Qaeda. It's just, taking advantage of a certain situation. But when it comes to Qatar, it's like, could they ally with transsexuals movement in America? Of course. Ideologically, again, they don't align. The same thing like American Al-Qaeda. But that strategic alliance is something not only taking advantage of it. Qatar is not taking advantage of the leftist destruction in the U.S. academia. I hope this makes sense. They are not actually benefiting from that ideologically. It doesn't add anything to them, because the left is against any religious supremacy. They want their own supremacy. But weakening the West will open the door for them. So we're talking about different nature of relationships between players. Qatar, unpredictable when it comes to what it could do.
Now, did Iran use the Palestinian cause as a tool rather than a mission? Did they ever actually care about the Palestinian people?
No, absolutely not. They never cared about the Palestinian people. Al-Assad regime in Syria, they supported Hamas for many years. They hosted Hamas. And the moment the Islamic revolution in Syria started, Hamas stood against Al-Assad and betrayed Al-Assad. Why? Because Hamas is the Muslim Brotherhood branch and they are Sunnis, and Al-Assad is not Sunni. So they preferred a Sunni leadership in Syria. So they betrayed Al-Assad. Hassan Nasrallah died as a result of his interference with the Gaza war. And yet many Muslims and many people, even in Gaza, they didn't see him as a martyr. You can see them actually on TikTok. If you go on TikTok, when Hassan Nasrallah, you watch videos from Gaza, people saying, oh, he never cared about us. He's Shia. May Allah never have mercy on him. Okay? He's Shia. So the relationship between Sunnis and Shia is more toxic than you could imagine, because there's no reconciliation, actually. There's no way to reconcile Shia and Sunnis, because the difference is not theology. I talked about this before. I wrote about this before. Actually, the theology developed after the political fragmentation, after the political conflict. So the theology was designed in a way that opposes the other side eternally. So it was not like, for example, Christian denominations, when they differ on theology, I mean, you can sometimes bring them to the table, like what happened Second Vatican, for example. Second Vatican brought Protestant back, even though they had centuries of war, but because the difference or the conflict was theological in the first place. Shia and Sunni, their difference is political, that was manifested in theology. So does Iran care about the people of Gaza, about Palestinians? Absolutely not. Zero. I mean, the Iranian regime doesn't care about Iranians. Would they care about the people of Gaza? Come on, give me a break. They killed 45,000 people this year. Of course they don't care. They see death as a prize. So they don't care about people dying as martyrs. But of course, they're not seeing the people of Gaza dying as martyrs anyway. But Israel or Gaza was used, just like the entire Palestinian cause was used by every different player in the region for many, many years, and being used today by the left in the West as a vehicle, as it's, I call it like a horse that you can ride, and everybody is riding it into their different battles. So Gamal Abdel Nasser, he wanted to fight the West. Let's fight the West by fighting Israel. The Muslim Brotherhood wants to reestablish the caliphate, but they cannot do that because of the Arab leaders who embraced the concept of nation state and don't believe in the caliphate anymore. Let's fight them through fighting Israel. Let's fight jihad through fighting Israel. Once we deal with Israel, we can deal with those idiots. That's how they saw it. The Iranian regime wants to fight the West, wants to fight the Sunnis. Let's fight them through fighting Israel. Let's gain ground in the Sunni world through Israel. Muslims in Lebanon, they didn't like that they were ruled by non-Muslims leadership, the Christians. Let's take down the Christian system, the Christian country through the Palestinian cause. It is the most toxic, poisonous cause in history. It's like everybody is using it. And today, you have the left, they want to build a utopia after they destroy, they want, to create the global government and to destroy the walls between nations. Let's use Palestine. Let's destroy the system through Palestine. So it's just unbelievable how this cause was manufactured to serve everybody's agenda. And the loser at the end of every spectrum of these is the West and Israel.
Now, why does it seem that some of Israel's loudest critics today are coming from the political right? Like people like Tucker Carlson. What do Tucker and his friends and audience fundamentally misunderstand about the Middle East?
Not only that, but we have Vice President Vance and what he said yesterday. So, yeah. But of course, everybody knew from the beginning that J.D. Vance is a friend of Tucker Carlson. So that was not surprising. We talked about this. On the right, there are different types of people. You have people who found Israel a liability. They support Israel, but it's a political liability today, so they dropped Israel. Those are the cowards, of course. Just like supporters of Israel on the left, they surrendered to the lunatics in the party. They surrendered the Democratic Party to the insane and the radicals today. Number two, you have isolationists, people who believe that America should not be the police of the world. But of course, I always find isolationism an absurd idea because you don't get to be the strongest country in the world without policing your interest all over the world. If you want to just, isolate yourself, then don't call yourself the greatest nation on earth because you're going to lose. You're going to create a vacuum, and that vacuum is going to be filled by everyone else. So, but there are the ideologues, the isolationists, the people who don't really want to interfere. And they genuinely believe that Israel is dragging the United States into wars. You have people who believe the narrative that they're the same group mainly, but they're not necessarily isolationist. They still want the United States to interfere, but they believe the narrative that Israel is the oppressor because of the propaganda, because of how the narrative was framed since October 7. You have people who are being paid by Qatar. That is for sure. Qatar is spending billions and billions of dollars. And, love of money is the root of all evil. This is what the Christian Bible says. So I believe that it doesn't matter how wealthy you are still could be bought by money. So this is a different group of people on the right. So yeah, I could think of a couple more maybe, but that is why. So basically, we are dealing with a situation that is so complicated now because this pressure, and it is sad, but unfortunately, this pressure is going to mount up to a complete abandonment of Israel, which is, I believe, expected and inevitable from the Israeli side. If Israel is not ready for that day, then I'm sorry, but they're delusional. It's coming. Israel is going to fight alone at one point because, as I always say, Israel is the litmus test. Israel is the symbol, and your position toward Israel determines the future of your civilization. People sometimes accuse me of being paid by the Mossad for saying that. Well, I'm actually, I don't know. It's like I don't claim to be a prophet, but I can see it very clearly that if you misinterpret, if you misunderstand this conflict, then you will lose. You will not be able to pass the same civilization to your children. So yeah, that is unfortunately what's happening now.
Why have people like Zohran Mamdani become such important political figures in America? What is his rise? Tell us about the future of major American cities. We see more and more people like him being elected.
Listen, Daniel, if Osama bin Laden runs today in the American election, he will win in some cities. And this romanticization of Hitler, of Osama bin Laden, if you remember the Osama bin Laden's letter that surfaced after October 7, and it was a trend among the Gen Z or Gen X, or I don't know these letters in there. But this romanticization is the peak of decades of indoctrination that took place in academia, in the media, and the culmination of the white guilt, the culmination of intersectionality, cultural relativism, different elements kept piling up until we reached a moment, and that moment was October 7, where the entire structure collapsed. And people like Zohran Mamdani is the incarnation of everything that was growing or piling up for these years. He is non-white, non-Christian. He belongs to an oppressed group. He is Israel. Israel is the extension of the Western colonization, the Western powers, the Western system that must be brought down in order to redeem these generations. These generations want to redeem themselves. There is the inability to understand the world from a different worldview. They live inside a bubble. They look at the privilege they have as a result of oppressing others instead of looking at them as the achievement of real hard work and great ideas. Instead of celebrating the West for giving women equal rights to be the first in the world, instead of celebrating the West for liberating the slaves, the West is the only side to be condemned for slavery. Instead of praising and glorifying the ideas that built the Western civilization, these ideas are not considered at all, because in the left thinking, ideas are not behind outcomes. Situations create ideas. What do I mean by that? So in Marxism, they believe that whatever ideology or ideas you hold to, they're not genuine. They were not generated by an authentic source or a transcendent source, for example, when it comes to faith. The ideas you believe in are the result of your circumstances. So because of, if you are living among the oppressed, the proletariat, then you will believe what the oppressor fed you. That is why postmodernism, relativism, there's no such a thing as gender. You create your own gender, you create your own truth. And that is why Islamic Jihad is not seen as an idea that generates violence and supremacy and discrimination. Islamic Jihad is seen as the result of circumstances imposed by the oppressor, which is the West. And that is why Islamic Jihad and Islamic terrorism is not to be condemned, but to be seen as justified political actions. So when you send your children to school and then they go to universities and they learn for years to think under this assumption and within this framework, what do you expect? Who are they going to vote for? Zohran Mamdani or a corrupt sexual predator candidate? Because that's how they see it. They see Zohran Mamdani as the oppressor who must rise up. He's the underdog who must become the mayor. The other guy, he is from the oppressor group. So this explains the entire situation, everything that we're dealing with.
Yeah, very clear. Now, a lot of people, they think of jihad, they think of terrorism, violence, but there are different types of jihad, right? I think you've mentioned policy jihad. Can you explain what the other forms of jihad are? And, most people don't know anything about those types of jihad.
So jihad, basically, or originally, it was raids between tribes. Before Islam, different tribes of Arabia would raid each other. That's how they lived. Actually, raids were regulated. So they would agree that we don't fight each other in these months, but we raid each other in these 9 months. So there was actually an off season for 3 months. Islam took the concept of raid and sanctified it, made it a religious mandate called jihad, and changed who is on the other end. So on the other end is not another tribe, it's the non-Muslim. So that's basically was jihad. But jihad, the word struggle. So it is any struggle to advance the rule of Allah. You can fight with your money. You don't have to go fight. You can fund it. And this is actually what is said in the Quran precisely. Those who fight for the sake of Allah with their money and their lives. So Uthman bin Affan, the companion of Muhammad, he was fighting with his money, funding the campaigns of Muhammad. You can fight with your tongue, with your word. If you see something that is not accepted by Allah, change it with your hand. If you can't, with your tongue. If you can't, with your heart. That is the hadith of Muhammad. Non-Islamic polity doesn't please Allah. Non-Islamic polity anywhere doesn't please Allah. So you fight against it. How? You can't fight with your hand. You cannot fight in the United States with your hand. What are you going to do? You fight it with your tongue. How do you do that? If you say, I want to establish the rule of Allah in America, you're a jihadist. No one is going to take you seriously. But if you say, if you borrow the lexicon of the left and you say, yeah, this government is illegitimate because it funds Israel and the genocide against the people of Gaza, we are the taxpayers. And by the way, the guy who speaks this comes from Yemen, from Pakistan, but of course he got a citizenship. So I call them American passport holder. So they are not Americans. They hold an American passport. And they start using the word we, the American people, we don't want that. We are funding. So why are they doing that? Because that is fighting or jihading against the enemies of Allah, but using their tools. I don't have to bring my own tools because I will be exposed. So you provide me with the tools, the vehicle. Democracy is a vehicle to end democracy, as the Muslim Brotherhood believes, and their pioneers believed. So you have policy jihad. It is mainly the jihad by the tongue, jihad of the womb. You procreate, jihad of the sword, any kind of jihad, any kind of jihad. For example, severing the relationship between the evangelicals in the United States and Israel. Is that jihad? Of course. You're undermining the enemies of Allah. You are flipping them against each other. Yeah.
And most people don't even understand that these are also forms of jihad. So
Yes. Just let me be clear. There are no categories of jihad. Anything that advances the cause of Allah is jihad. Anything. So you don't go and read about, of course, a certain imam would put them in this same language, but I mean, Muslims don't need to learn it in this manner in order to understand it. It is the nature of the relationship between Muslims and Allah. It is that anything that advances the cause of Islam is jihad, accepted by Allah, pleases Allah. I will give you reward for it. You're serving me. Whatever that is. That is why when it comes to morality, is lying for the cause of Allah accepted? That is a ridiculous question because you're assuming that there is something good that could be contradictory to the advancement of the cause of Allah. It doesn't exist. Anything that advances the cause of Allah is good. Therefore, is lying a good thing? Absolutely. It is good. It's commanded because it advances the cause of Allah. In this context, of course. So, yeah.
So the goal of the Muslim Brotherhood is simply just to advance the cause of Allah? Is that their only goal?
Yeah. Yes. Listen, the Muslim Brotherhood, the Sunnis who take Islam seriously, they are like the evangelicals. Evangelicals, they live for one cause, to spread the gospel of Jesus Christ to the end of the world. That's it. Is that everything they live for? And I'm talking here about evangelicals who are born again Christian, people who are committed. Yes, everything in their life is about advancing the gospel of Jesus Christ. They have prayer meetings every day. So the same thing, think of Muslims who take Islam seriously in the same way. They live for the advancement of the cause of Allah.
And it seems that Muslim Brotherhood is banned in some Arab countries, but it seems like they're flourishing in democracies. They, as you said, they take advantage of democracies. Is there any way to fight them in a democracy, or are we doomed because of our own laws?
Yeah, you cannot save yourself without killing yourself, unfortunately. You need just to borrow a Christian symbol, you need the cross for this dilemma. You need to die on the cross to save others. Yeah. So, you need to kill democracy to save it. So, I'll tell you why. I'll tell you why. And I wrote about this before. Let's say a Muslim king, like King Abdullah in Jordan, he bans the Muslim Brotherhood. What does that mean? In Jordan, that doesn't mean he's banning a political party. That means he's banning the ideas that party believe in. The Muslim Brotherhood believes in Islamic polity. The king bans the Muslim Brotherhood. Therefore, Islamic polity as an idea is banned. And he can do it. Why? Because he's a Muslim leader. He can enforce it because he's a dictator, a good dictator. So in Islamic countries, that works. Now, President Trump appears on the scene and he wants to do the same. And, everybody around him, they're clapping and applauding him. We're going to ban the Muslim Brotherhood. Well, President Trump bans the Muslim Brotherhood. What does that mean? He's banning political party. What about the idea? Nah, you cannot really ban it. It's like tomorrow morning, the same people you banned their party are going to the city building and apply or file for a new organization, different name, same ideas, and they will keep functioning and operating inside the United States. They will keep running candidates, and the West will fall one politician at a time. So what do? You need to ban the idea. What is the idea? Islamic supremacy, the rule of Allah. How do you do that? Islam is protected by the freedom of religion. How do you do that? Islam is not a religion. If communism decide to install Marx as their prophet and the manifesto of the Communist Party as their Quran, and they claim they are religion, are you going to give them religious impunity? Are you going to protect them under the religious freedom of religion mandate? That is the question, man. We need to recategorize Islam from a religion to a political ideology that has a religion. What is the religion in Islam? It is, praying, fasting, even though praying is also political when it's conducted in public, but whatever ritual, spiritual exercises, that is religion. Other than that, Islam is 90% political. Now, I always use this. I say, your house is not a kitchen. Your house has a kitchen. Islam is not a religion. Islam has a religion. So that is how you need to see it. But unfortunately, that is why you cannot save the West except through recognizing that Islam is not a religion. It is a political ideology, or by killing your democracy and becoming authoritarian, dictatorial regime in order to control the situation.
Danny, this has been a fascinating conversation. I could speak to you for hours, but hope to have you back again. How can people find you, purchase your book, and see anything that you're currently working on?
Yeah, so basically my book is Islam, Israel, and the West. It's available on Amazon and wherever books are sold. My account on X, where I write every day, is Dan Burmawi, Burmawy, not I. But my website is danburmawi.com, where I publish long-form articles. And of course, our organization, IDI Center, the Ideological Defense Institute.
Thank you, and I hope to talk to you again soon.
Thank you, Daniel.